me know when you're good to go. So we've had our most recent quarterly performance data released today. This performance data shows the period from 1st of July to the end of September. We have seen a very small improvement in some areas, but as we expected, this data does cover the third wave of COVID, where it took till mid-August before we started coming down off those really high staff furloughed numbers and COVID bed numbers. What I'm pleased to say, though, is despite all of those challenges we had over the last quarter, we have seen improvement again on elective surgery, and particularly the high acuity ones. We are seeing, though, a significant increase in ED presentations of Category 1. There's been over a 7% increase in the most serious cases coming through our emergency department. Despite this, over that quarter, 100% of those cases were seen within the clinically recommended time. So I'm pleased that our health workers have been able to ensure that they're delivering that high-quality health care despite the challenges we have had over the last quarter. We continue to see, patient off stretcher time. There's been about a 1% increase. Again, we weren't expecting much different to that over the last quarter. We know many of the initiatives we're starting to put in place. We are seeing some diversions, but the reality is that for every surgery we clear with elective surgery, we're seeing an increase in presentations in our EDs. And in that high acuity area, that means more hospital beds, and it means longer stays in hospital. So it's not just about the numbers of people coming into our hospital, it is the complexity in relation to those illnesses. And of course, we know the higher the acuity, the longer these people will end up in our hospital system. So I do want to acknowledge the great work of our health workers over the last quarter in managing to get a lot of elective surgery done, over 33,000 elective surgery, getting more people through outpatients, and of course we're seeing a 17% median turnaround time as far as presentations in ED. That's compared to 20 minutes back in 2013-14, despite the challenges we've had over the past quarter.
Minister, you mentioned the challenges, COVID, etc. Given that we're sort of out of the COVID wave now, looking at those figures, ramping elective surgery in the wait for a specialist appointment, do you expect that they will come down in the quarter that we're currently in, given those challenges are disappearing? Yeah,
look, I expect that we'll still continue to see improvements around long wait times, so those waiting longer than clinically recommended time for elective surgery, because we are concentrating on those categories, and particularly those categories 1 to 3, because we know they're the most serious. So We'll continue to see improvements there. We saw a 40% increase the previous quarter in our elective surgery that we're doing. As far as patient off stretcher time, I think the important thing to remember is it is one measure. So I'm hearing, but the data's just going up, I think today as well, which is the latest QAS data. So we're seeing an improvement in ambulance response times. So it's not just patient off stretcher time, because remembering that's that 30-minute mark. What we're not talking about is how much beyond that 30 minutes we're now seeing turned around. But the response time is really important. So any improvement in response time of ambulances getting to people quicker, that's great news. And of course, with what I announced the other week with the model that we've got happening at QAS now, with diverting people, the virtual emergency department, we hope that we'll see some improvements there as well. What we can't control is that significant increase in that high acuity. That's very, very interesting. I'll be interested to see if around the country we're seeing that, but it's over 7% jump is quite extraordinary in those most serious cases.
And so this is the ED presentations cut line. That's obviously going to put enormous pressure on the hospital.
It will.
Is there anything you can do to help alleviate
Well, as I say, it's really difficult because we can't control what comes in the door as far as the types and complexity of injuries or illnesses. But we do know that, what we are seeing coming into our hospitals is higher acuity, more complex, which means longer bed stays. So it's not just, when we talk about patient flow, if what's coming in the front door is more complex cases than what we're clearing out through elective surgery and that becomes an even bigger challenge for the health system. These are the sorts of things we're discussing with the Commonwealth as well, about how we actually calculate what is weighted activity and value as far as what we're delivering in the public health system. Because the more we divert what we can away from hospitals and away from EDs, what it means is what we're left with is the most serious cases that are going to require, more specialists and the longer times in hospital, and we have to manage that. It is a catch-22 as more beds became available with COVID cases declining. We have filled those beds with all of those elective surgeries. So, it's not a case that beds are being freed up because of COVID cases dropping. It is the reality that we are doing as much as we possibly can of planned care to deal with those long waits that we're seeing that unfortunately occurred over the last 2 years with delays in surgery.
When we compare this year's figures with last year's for hospital presentations, it looks like there's 70,000 less, but are we seeing, I guess, more severe but less
so
people?
just to explain that, you're going to see a significant drop. I think it's around 11% drop in ED presentations. ED presentations included fever clinics. So, when you take that out, you're probably seeing, similar sort of numbers to what we had seen before, but I think it's 7.3% increase in Category 1. So that's why trying to measure those figures, but gone back and had a look at the 2019 figures, so pre-COVID as well, and how does this compare? And even though we've done less surgeries, what we've seen is an increase in the Category 1 surgeries that we've been able to clear for those long waits. So it's where we're prioritising, and of course, there's commentary happening nationally, I understand, with Paul Kelly as well, about what we can face as far as future COVID cases. But right now, I'm pleased that we are seeing low numbers and we can concentrate on getting those planned care surgeries done and people into outpatients. So we're seeing an improvement in outpatient appointments as well for first-time appointments.
So on another matter, last Friday, the last Parliament sitting of a Friday, Parliament was brought back from 6 p.m. to 1 p.m. We're told there was a Melbourne Cup cruise that left at 4 p.m. that day and that you were on it. Is that true?
I went on a holiday, yes. The two are completely unrelated. Parliament can operate whether I'm here or not. So if there's any allegations that they're linked, it's not accurate.
So you were on that cruise?
I'm not discussing my holidays. I had a few days off. It's the first time I've had a full week off in 2 weeks, and I think people would appreciate it's important I look after my mental health as well as the health of Queenslanders.
I understand. The allegation that is being made, I guess, to us is that you're on a cruise at 4 p.m. when Parliament was finishing at 6 p.m.
It was never finishing. It was never finishing. Can I be absolutely clear? The LNP have been completely misleading, and I'll say it here, have blatantly lied when they say that we were sitting till 6 o'clock. We were never sitting till 6 o'clock for last sitting week, this coming sitting week, or the following sitting week, ever. The conversation I had with Manager of Opposition Business is we would agree what the hours would be for that first week after we returned from acknowledging the passing of the Queen, and that we would sit till 6 o'clock. As for the sitting hours of the following 3 sitting weeks, I said we would negotiate that at the last sitting week. There was never a discussion it would be 6 o'clock. It was never an agreement for 6 o'clock, and if the LNP are saying that, they're just blatantly lying.
Can I just ask you, Minister, on the 50-50 calls for 50-50 hospital funding, the Commonwealth, are you sort of disappointed that the Prime Minister's not on board with that?
Oh, look, I understand the position of the federal budget and the challenges that the Albanese government's had since they come in. That doesn't mean we're going to stop having the conversation. We have still said we want 50-50 funding. We have still said we want a removal of the cap. But what we want, more importantly, going forward, is just a change in the way we fund public health systems generally.
Is it a conversation, though, it's going nowhere now?
Well, no, because there is agreement to bring forward the negotiations for the next National Partnership Agreement. So we've all understood that that needs to be brought forward. We've all understood that we need to have a conversation about what that looks like, how do we fund, you know, the weighted activity, what activity should be funded across the public health system. And there is a genuine acknowledgement that there needs to be work done in the primary and allied healthcare system, because what happens with our GPs and access to private health, private hospitals, specialists, GPs in the community and allied healthcare has a direct impact on the public health system. If people cannot get in to see a GP, either because the appointment's not available or it's not affordable, whether it's out of metropolitan Brisbane or its most regional remote communities, everyone understands those people end up in the hospital system, the public hospital system. And what we're seeing is there's over 3 million Queenslanders who don't have private health insurance now. And then the ones who do, many of them are still using our public hospitals. They're still coming to our public hospitals for elective surgery because either the gap and the cost is still too great, despite their private health insurance, or the facilities and the services are just not there in the region. So, you know, that is a major problem that we have to have an honest conversation about, that a lot of people have private health insurance that they're not using and they're still turning to the public health system. And if that's the case, if we have to pick up the slack because the private health insurance isn't covering people adequately, then there needs to be a conversation of how that's funded. Now, we might get the money for it. We can claim through people's private health insurance, but it's still beds. It's still beds that we have to provide in the regions for people who otherwise have private health insurance, because there was a failing in the market in relation to some of these areas.
Okay, thanks guys. We're gonna put
Thank
that on
you.
now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hello. Hello. Hello.
Okay, we're happy to take some questions.
Premier, is there an update on the Callide Power Station? What was your briefing today?
Yes, okay, well the Minister's here, he'll update you more in a moment, but we have sufficient supply. That's the message I want to give Queenslanders. If that changes, of course, we will let you know, but also too, the Minister has spoken to the market regulator as well, and is very much of the view that Queensland is absolutely fine at the moment. So good news, but of course workplace health and safety will be going in there and doing an audit of what went wrong.
Are you worried the system won't be able to keep up if we get hotter conditions and people are cranking their aircons?
We have sufficient supply. Like I said, we've got more units coming online in the next couple of weeks as well. So we are very happy with the briefing we've received. The Minister was very comprehensive in his briefing to Cabinet, and he's happy to talk to you about a few of those things now.
The Queenslanders here were like absolutely fine and it's all good. We're thinking no summer of blackouts, but are they statements that could come back to haunt you if we do see a summer of blackouts?
As I said, we will update Queenslanders. If anything changes, we will update Queenslanders, but at the moment there is sufficient supply. Don't forget too, there are issues in New South Wales in terms of their generation supply at the moment. It's not just Queensland, and of course we operate right across the east coast. We are all connected, but of course we also have our very clear energy and jobs plan, and of course announcing we're looking for 2,300 extra workers across Queensland as well. So if you want to come and work in our energy sector, there's something there for you.
Premier, last week you said this was routine. What was routine about these failures of generators?
Every now and again, there are issues that face our generators. Of course, some are ageing, as you can appreciate, and of course we are now transitioning where we're getting a whole lot of new renewables onto the system. We've got a lot in place at the moment, but there is sufficient supply.
So when will these generators be fixed? When will we see them back?
The Minister will be able to update you on that.
You must be disappointed though. It's not good enough, right, that they're breaking down.
Well, we have an ageing fleet. That is nothing new. We know that. That is why we have a plan to transition. But there are maintenance that is needed from time to time on these generators, and that is exactly what is. They have planned for a lot of these routine maintenance. So at the moment, like I said, we are very happy that we have sufficient supply.
Will the shutdown or wind down have to be moved forward, just given that it is having these maintenance failures?
I might get the Minister to answer, but they actually update to the market regulator when there are going to be planned maintenance on the different units. So if we're all interconnected, we're all part of the East Coast, so we have to make sure that we do that, and that is done.
Was it a mistake to call it routine?
In terms of, we do see these happen from time to time, and I think everybody understands that and everybody realises that happens. Do I like to see that happen? No, I don't. But these things do happen from time to time, and as I said, we have sufficient supply. So this nonsense that is being peddled out there is nonsense. There is sufficient supply at present, and I'll hand over to the Minister to go into a bit more detail.
Thank you, Premier. And the Premier is absolutely correct. The things that have been said by the LNP opposition leader prove that they don't understand the electricity market. They don't know how it works. They don't know how it operates. I can provide this information to you now. This is available to the public that shows right now Queensland demand sits at 5,005 megawatts and available supply sits at 9,560. So what Leader of the Opposition David Christofouli has been doing over the last few days is lying to Queenslanders, is scaremongering, and it demonstrates they don't understand the system.
If we were in a heat wave, would those figures be different?
Oh, of course the demand goes up and down, but we have been getting daily briefings, as I regularly do. The National Energy Market Operator has confirmed the Queensland system is what he describes as healthy.
That's right, but at the moment we're seeing it's all demand is fine.
Yep.
But sometimes in November we've seen heat waves of 40 plus degrees. Now, if we were in that situation, would we have been okay in this instance when Port Power's generators go down?
That's the advice I've received, yes.
We would have been okay in a heat wave?
Yes, there's adequate supply.
The LNP argues that a few months ago you asked people to conserve energy, so moving forward we won't see any blackouts?
Now, what we said a few months ago was that Queenslanders are always careful about their energy use. We know that they're the highest rate of solar installers in the world. We know that they also want to manage their cost of living. So being careful about your energy use is something that Queenslanders always do.
So when will we see these generators back up and running?
So there'll be a progressive return of those generators. We expect one to be back up and running this Wednesday, but the market is updated on a regular basis if there's any changes to that. We'll see around 700 megawatts of supply back on by the end of this month. That's really significant. So we also know that every 11 minutes in Queensland a new solar rooftop installation goes on. So there is sufficient electricity supply. What is causing people's concerns is the fact that David Christofouli is lying about the energy system for his own purposes. I'll trust the Australian Energy Market Operator, Daniel Westerman, that CEO, any day of the week before I listen to advice about the energy system that the LNP wanted to sell off and get rid of. We would have no control of the energy system under the policy of the LNP.
And has the state been keeping up the maintenance requirements of these generators?
Yeah, so there are 7 pieces of legislation and regulation that govern the maintenance of those energy assets. Of course, workplace health and safety legislation, a range of other codes. I'm advised that all of those obligations and good engineering practice have been adhered to.
Is that going to be part of those investigations from workplace health and safety?
Yeah, so again, yesterday we saw David Christofouli demand an investigation. Well, the investigation started 5 days before that. It actually started on Wednesday. Right? And then CS Energy announced a further investigation on Friday by independent engineers. So those processes will consider all of those things to make sure that if there's any improvements need to be made, then they will be.
Are you planning for any issues to arise once temperatures start to soar and demand is high, say on aircons, and people won't be able to crank their aircons up? I mean, do you have confidence in the system to be able to cope?
The advice that I get from the Australian Energy Market Operator is that the system in Queensland is healthy and stable and manageable. So we're very confident that we'll continue to be able to put downward pressure on prices and that will be adequate supply for both households and, of course, business.
Premier, is there any chance of a cabinet reshuffle before Christmas?
Not planning one, no.
Not planning one?
No.
The Electoral Commissioner
Yes.
fears that these proposed changes will jeopardise the independence of the body. What are your thoughts on that?
Look, the ECQ will remain independent. Queenslanders expect that. Now, in relation to this legislation, my understanding is that it's currently before the committee, and the ECQ was consulted before it went to the committee as well as part of our government consultation. And of course, we'll listen very closely to what the committee says. And I understand what the ECQ is saying, but it's before the committee. We look forward to the report.
Would you consider excluding the ECQ from these laws?
Well, let's see what the committee says. Let them do their work. I'm quite sure they'll listen to all of the stakeholders that appear before them.
Yesterday at the conference, I understand there was a motion discussed about you want to increase the number of women in your cabinet longer term. Is there any sort of set benchmarks where you're looking to get a certain number of women into your cabinet by?
We were one of the first jurisdictions to have 50% women in our cabinet. I think we're one off that at the moment. We've always maintained a high representation of women. I'd like to see more multicultural representation as well. We should be very diverse in our cabinet into the future, reflecting our modern Queensland.
And there's no benchmarks or set targets anywhere future down the line. As you mentioned, you've already got a high percentage match rate.
Correct.
But yes,
Yes.
Is there any benchmarks further down the line that you're aiming for?
I think 50% is good, but if we can, it ebbs and flows. Yeah.
Was today your first briefing on energy, or did you receive any on Friday or over the weekend?
The minister's been keeping me updated.
Over the weekend?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
See you tomorrow.